Well, if we're all set, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First order of business is for Dr. Offit to call the roll.
Good afternoon. Yes, Chair, I will go ahead and call the roll. Chair Elaine Walker.
Here.
Dr. Kelly Ellis.
Present.
Dr. Rochelle Brown.
Here.
Kobe Burks. Dr. Letitia Robertson.
Present.
Terrence Sullivan. Mr. Robert Croft is joining us. I'll give him a moment. David Carpenter.
Here.
Whitney Allen. And for the record, I can see that Mr. Croft is joining us. We have a quorum present, but we'll make sure that we get him a verbal present when he's able to connect audio.
Wonderful. Is Dr. Thompson with us today? Do we have updates from Dr. Thompson?
He had indicated that he would be on, and he is not as of yet. So he might be running a few minutes behind, and so we can come back to him as needed.
Wonderful. Comments from CPE Vice President and General Counsel Travis Powell?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I can certainly give some updates. They were going to be around the legislative lines, and I was going to sort of supplement whatever Dr. Thompson said. So why don't if it's okay with the chair, I'll just wait for his comments, and then I'll kind of fill in the blanks for the things that he left out. So if that's okay.
Okay. Then why don't we go ahead? We'll wait then. Why don't we go ahead and have approval of the minutes? You may notice that those minutes are from June 28th. The October meeting was canceled due to a lack of quorum. And so we need to, fortunately, the business that needed to be addressed was able to go to the CPE board, so it was officially handled in that manner. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from June? Are there any changes, comments? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. This is David.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second. Second.
By David and second by Robert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
no.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. And just let me know when Dr. Thompson is able to join us, and we'll go ahead and get his remarks.
He's
He has
on.
joined us now.
I'm here, Madam Chair.
There you are.
How could you miss this space?
Well, you know, it's because my screen can only hold so much beauty, and unfortunately, I didn't shift it.
You know, I can't help but to appreciate that answer.
That was a good answer.
That was a good one. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all you all. Happy New Year. It's good to be back with you. Lots of stuff going on. I'll let Travis and Dawn give you all the formal updates. I'm jumping between a lot of meetings, so I won't be able to stay on here very long, but I wanted to give you kind of a quick update about what's been going on. And in a nutshell, I mean, it's fairly good news. One of the items I will tell you is that Kentucky continues to move up in the rankings of credentials given from our baseline. We're like number 3 in the nation now, which is a huge movement in the last 3 or so years. The other item I'm really proud about is that we're closing gaps, if not faster, as fast as any state in the nation, especially around students of color and all the student success markers that we're proud of. I can also say that every student success metric that we use. This past year, we ended up being good and positive on all of them. Not often you get a chance to make that kind of statement. I'll keep on saying a few things along those lines. We've done a really good job of letting people know the value of higher education, not just for a few, but for all, to a point where we're finally getting that message to some folk who may find it hard to hear it. And in return, I think we've got some other benefits, such as if the House budget holds true, we'll have more funding put in higher ed this coming biennium than we've had in a long time. If the governor's budget had held true, it would have been so historic. It would have been, at least in my memory, and I've been doing higher ed in Kentucky since the late 80s, not anything that I've seen, even close, to be honest with you, not even with 1997 post-secondary reform, even though that would have rivaled somewhat that budget. But the House didn't go with all of that, but they went with a significant portion. So we feel good about that. One of the areas that we are not as well off in as I would feel comfortable in is us closing the gaps of our low income students. That's still very problematic. We don't have enough adult learners coming in our system, and that's especially true for our adult learners of color. And some of the professions that are so important to us in this state, like healthcare and teachers, we are not only in a great need of both, we're in a significant need of teachers of color and healthcare people of color. I'll give you an example of Louisville, which is our highest population of African Americans and Latinx by proportion. What we find out is that if you look at the EMTs, emergency medical technicians, 95% of them are white. Very small percent of people of color, period, but African Americans, really a small percent. I can do the same with nurses. I can do the same with hospital administrators. I can do the same, you name it, I can do it. These are areas that I would hope this committee pays some attention to and have discussions on. How can we get more disaggregated in the way that we think about gap closing? How can we now look at, even though we've done a really good job in aggregate of doing it, how can we get it down to a point whereby we are assisting, if you will, our institutions as well as our workforce to think about those ties that we need in order to build the state that we argue that we have to build for the 21st century. So those are some of the things that I want to kind of charge us with as we go into a new year, new chair, new people on the committee. The idea that what we do with this committee, and we're the only committee like this that comes close to existing in CPE, is to really be able to use your wisdom and where you're coming from to help look at the most disaggregated level possible, what we can do to impact this state from a higher education perspective. So I hope we pay, Madam Chair, some attention on some of these needed items that we need to focus on. Once again, Travis is going to give you some really more detailed information on this. I'm happy to say we got our cultural competence certificate going, and we got our first application. Tons of people are calling about it now from different universities and colleges, but also from our criminal justice system and even some of the folks in our healthcare. So really, we have made advances. Other states are looking to us. This Friday, I'll be talking with the Association of Governing Boards and talking with them about how to really give DEI some legs to make things happen like we're making happen in Kentucky. So people around the nation are listening to us and looking at us as a beta to do some of the things that we're doing. And once again, I'm sure Dawn and Travis have talked to you about that we were picked out of all the states to focus on helping design a process for training governing boards on higher education campuses, as well as systems like ours throughout the nation, because they feel like we've done a better job around issues of student success and gap closing. So I'm going to leave it there, Madam Chair, and happy to take any questions that I need to take, or listen to Dr. Offit and Travis give me any sort of items for me to say that I may have missed.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Dr. Thompson? Travis, do you want to back clean up on this?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Thompson. I'll just go ahead and put some numbers behind what Dr. Thompson said. I'll hit on a few other bills as well. And Dr. Thompson, please, jump in, and if you want to add anything, any of these that you might want to talk about. But just to give you an idea of the impact here from the House budget. And again, I just to give you some perspective and in my 15 years in state government, I mean, we've been, starting in 2006 and 2008 with the recession, we were going through a process of figuring out what happens if we don't get a budget. What are we going to do with furloughs? And we had to go home a few days. It was cuts. And basically our conversation with the legislature was, please we want you to invest in higher education, but we know that's probably not going to happen. So please just don't cut us too much. From now, where they're making significant investments in higher education, 50 million in the House budget that passed is now over with the Senate for review there. Includes $50 million in new funding each year in our performance funding model, which, as some of you all know, includes premiums for graduation and attention of low income and underrepresented minority students. $700 million for asset preservation, so much deferred maintenance at our institutions' buildings. While this money will be for asset preservation, it'll directly result in more resources provided to students, because that will be money that they will no longer have to spend on maintaining these buildings and patching these areas and not really fixing them. So this will help in that regard and open up fiscal resources on our campuses for other things they need to do to help support students. $813 million for new construction and renovation projects on our campuses. And in addition, help with our for pension subsidies as well. So again, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, we're in unprecedented times and in a positive way, and we're having conversations with legislators, every day. And we're, again, the conversations used to be, well, tell us, higher ed's important, and we need to try to spare higher education as much as you can from cuts, from thanking them for the investment that they're providing for higher education, and hoping that continues, and even maybe trying to argue for some more money. The other big item that we're dealing with, as a lot of you may be aware, House Bill 250, our bill for funding of Kentucky State University, $23 million to cover the deficit there, the current deficit at Kentucky State University. The bill provides a significant amount of oversight that would be housed at CPE for a management improvement plan for Kentucky State University, and in 3 years, a summative review of the progress that Kentucky State University has made. So we've been spending a lot of time on that bill, as you might imagine, and talking about the financial report that we completed back in November, advocating for resources for Kentucky State University. It's so important to our state. I know you all know this very much, but it's vital to the higher ed ecosystem that we maintain Kentucky State and make it a strong HBCU. And so we're doing a lot of work there, and but then it's still early in the session, so there's, other than the budget, not a lot has moved. There's been a lot that's been posted or filed, but and some posted to committees, but not a lot of movement yet. It's still very, very early in the session. But just to highlight a couple things for you, there FAFSA bill has been passed the House that would make filling out the FAFSA a requirement for high school graduation. That's a huge benefit to our low income and underrepresented students for very obvious reasons. Many students don't have any idea of the resources that they can have and don't even think that college is an option for them. By filling out the FAFSA, they will be provided with information of how much money they can receive to go on and continue their studies, whether that be at the 2-year level, the 4-year level, any technical school, one of our universities. We just know that our students need to continue, and they don't know that what the opportunities they have unless they fill out the FAFSA. So we're very much in support of this legislation.
Travis, could I just
Yes.
ask a question? Does that
Sure.
legislation include anything with regard to actually providing students with assistance to fill out this form that for many of us still sends chills down our spine because we have to do it for our kids or for ourselves?
It does actually, and it provides, there's a financial literacy component too. But Dr. Thompson, do you want to speak a little bit to the FAFSA bill?
Yes. First of all, I am for this bill. What you're asking for, Elaine, will be a physical note that if the bill passed, that we're going to be having to ask for. Now, part of what's really needed more than anything else, as you all know, is to have some of these college and career advisors in the schools that would work directly with them. That's the connection that we've made. And Kia has asked for that money for those advisors. And so far it's in the budget. And if those are connected, those two will go in unison, because that's what those positions should be designed to do. Not only just with the FAFSA, but with so many other things to get them ready for college, and not just academically, but also the social, emotional, in this case, the financial. The other point that I'll make, and Travis said this, I think, we leave about $45 million on the table every year. And that's not even, and we only have 50% of our high school students graduating going to college. So couldn't you imagine if we had more people graduating going to college and we're filling out the FAFSA exactly what we would look like in this state? And no doubt about it, the people that are most affected here are our low-income students and our students of color. And I go against the grain with the FAFSA stuff by comparison to many of our P-12 colleagues who don't feel like it's an unfunded mandate or more work on it. I don't know how we not do what we need to do. This FAFSA, even with the new form, is easier than it's ever been, but it's still daunting for even someone like me who feel, even though my kids get no need-based money, I still feel like the FAFSA is a way to show people the importance of doing so.
Thank you.
Yeah, most of that assistance will be done at the district level, at least as currently constituted in the bill. But, obviously they're going to need some help with resources to implement that. And also, too, just some policies and procedures around that. And we hope to be involved in that as well. Again, it's just something, while it will be a heavy lift at the K-12 on our K-12 partners. I mean, obviously the benefit is too large to ignore. So, again, a lot of bills filed that we're tracking. Again, it's early in the session, so I won't go through all the different ones in detail. At this point, we're kind of waiting to see what moves and what doesn't. You guys have probably heard about there's been several quote CRT bills filed. None of those have started moving yet. We're continuing to watch those. Obviously, do not support those, but we're taking a look at them, see what's happening with them. There's a student due process bill and a student free speech bill that's been proposed as well. Obviously, we support due process for students and we support student free speech. Some of the requirements in these bills are unnecessary in our opinion, but we're still watching those and we'll certainly track along as they move through the legislative process. But again, it's very early in the session. A lot of focus on redistricting, budget, and now I think they're going to start working on tax reform a little bit too. But again, it's lots to track. But we're on it. All our campus representatives are on it. We meet weekly. formally all together. All our campus legislative liaisons meet together, but we're talking constantly, letting each other know what's going on in the world of the legislature. So anyway, I will continue to keep this group posted as we move along. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and I'm sure Dr. Thompson can answer some other questions as well.
Are there any questions for Travis or Dr. Thompson?
I have a quick question or comment. This is David. Is there any legislation that, or you can keep us in touch with, that you would recommend that you would want us to help push for or against? You know,
Yes.
A lot of us are connected to, legislators and or in this process for this and other things too, but
Well, I'll say anything you can do to advocate, just generally in the budget, and continue and thinking legislators you're in contact with, or encouraging them if they, if they're in the Senate, not in the House, for their support for higher education, I think is certainly helpful. As far as the individual bills go, we'll continue to watch those and let you know. I appreciate you bringing that up, because we may very well utilize your resources. If it's something that we maybe are not in favor of, we kind of take a sort of a wait and see approach with those a lot of times to see whether or not they're going to have any movement. A lot of things get filed and never even get heard in committee. But once we know what those bills are, and if they start to move, we may very well reach out to you. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because sometimes we need all the help we can get. And that's a resource that we shouldn't forget. You all are a resource that we shouldn't forget.
Well, I'll go one step farther and say that as you deal with, if you have friends in the Senate and other places, we obviously like to see our House budget approved, but we would like to have a few other things. For an example, we asked for money in our ed continuum, and that's really been one of the more successful. This is in CPE's budget. Connecting our P12 with higher ed into the workforce is crucial. And we've been able to piece together some dollars to do that up to this point, but without money coming in, that is going to be harder. So things like that, as well as the healthcare dollars that are still in the budget, these are small dollars by comparison, but these are the sorts of things that really move the dial. We found out in Kentucky. Some of the grants we've been able to give the campuses, although not large, we've seen bigger impact just by targeting our efforts and focusing our dollars on doing those. So I would ask for you to be advocates for any of these things that that's going to go to help what this committee stands for.
Thank you.
Do you think that, and we can go on for this, Dr. Thompson, that workforce development is playing a role in any of this? I know this is a huge area of need for manufacturing and all of those things. Do you feel, in your opinion, that the legislation understands the importance or is supporting some of these bills based on workforce development that we need?
Yeah, absolutely. And I sell that, to be honest with you, because it's truth. Now, when you say workforce development, I want to make sure we talk about it in terms that we want to talk about it in. Workforce development takes place also on our four-year campuses, but we never sell it or think of it that way. We think of it largely on our community and technical colleges, and the technical being the item here. My argument simply is this: if you look at the future of work and look at what they're predicting from Georgetown studies as well as others, you're going to have more people with baccalaureate degrees too, and more people with professional degrees to exist in the workforce. And they have to be more diverse, and they have to think with a more diverse mind, because they're going to be dealing with people everywhere. So my argument is I give equity legs here, and beyond the value proposition of why it is important, right? We learn more from people different than us than we do from people like us. So it's deep learning, no doubt. But it also has a workforce component. It has a future economic development component. And if Kentucky wants to thrive, we better be connecting all these dots in a way that people can hear it. So that's an excellent question, David. The quick answer is yes, I could have given you that, but I decided to give a little more. But absolutely, and that's the way we have to think about this in a very practical way, beyond just the value propositional way.
And I'll just give you one. I didn't mention this, but I'll just give you one quick example. In the House version of the budget, CPE received $20 million each fiscal year to support a healthcare workforce initiative to help build out some of the obvious needs that COVID has highlighted in our healthcare. So I mean, that's one example of one workforce area that that the General Assembly has invested in, and we'd be managing those funds.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson and Travis. That's very informative. And please keep us in tune as to any actions that we need to take to support legislation, particularly when it becomes crucial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Thompson mentioned it a little bit. We want to talk about cultural competence credential certification. And that's a mouthful to say. And we actually have the first awardees or the first university that has attained this level. And Dr. Offit, did you want to talk a little bit about this issue?
Yes, thank you. So when last we met, I presented to you, I presented to you the draft of our cultural competency credential certification process. And I wanted to let you know that since then, the process has been finalized and approved by the CPE board at its last June CPE board meeting. And as a reminder, the process is designed to support the Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Policy for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And in that policy, it identifies the creation of a cultural competency certificate program as one of the strategies an institution can implement in order to meet certain goals in the components of the policy. So in response to this part of the policy, we at CPE created a statewide cultural competency certification process, whereby institutions may opt to have their cultural competency program certified by the CPE, which will afford them the opportunity for their program to have an independent third-party verification and provide consistency, currency, and portability for students who are awarded any credentials that come through their program. But it's not only for students, it can be for faculty and staff. And so institutions that create their own programs can submit them to have a proposal to have them certified by CPE so that they can demonstrate that it's in alignment with the 8 of the 4th model for cultural competence. And so the process is aligned in such a way that once they submit a proposal, the proposal is then presented to our Cultural Competency Advisory Council. That council consists of representatives from both faculty and staff representatives from both 2- and 4-year institutions from across the state. And that council then reviews the proposal and provides feedback on alignment and compliance, and will make a recommendation to our Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee to be certified and be posted on our website, et cetera. And so we are very excited that Western Kentucky University was the first institution to provide a proposal for faculty, and that proposal was subsequently approved last week at our Academic and Strategic Initiative Committee. And so we have representatives here from Western Kentucky University to give you an overview of their program today. We have our 2 institutional reps that we work with, which are Dr. Molly Kirby and Mr. Michael Crow, and they have their colleague, Dr. Marco Dumancic, with us to talk about the actual proposal and their faculty program. So I will turn it over to Dr. Kirby and her team to give us an overview.
Thanks, Dawn. I'm just going to tell you a little bit the impetus of where we got where we are. Michael and I, and about the summer of 2020, started what we call the 1WKU campaign. We borrowed a little bit of it from Bono, and we borrowed a little bit of it from Keisha Bottoms in Atlanta, and started the 1WKU campaign, an effort to make our campus extremely inclusive. So as part of that, Michael and I did some deliberative dialogues, book clubs, all these sort of things, and we piloted what we called the 1WKU Academy. And we put faculty and staff together. And we started with some of those, like microaggressions, implicit bias training, intercultural communication, and did sort of those things. Out of that, we kind of discovered that faculty and staff had different needs. And at the same time, Marco Demonchich had been working on with some diversity, equity, inclusion fellows within campus to come up with some research, some pedagogical things and sort of that. And they came up with the idea to have an institute. So instead of repeating what we did, we kind of pulled staff and faculty apart and started, basically Marco just took over, and him and his diversity, equity, and inclusion fellows created this program. So I'm actually going to let Marco talk about that because he's the mastermind behind this, him and his fellows.
Well, thank you. First of all, Dr. Kirby and Dr. Offit, thank you so much for pronouncing my last name like Croatian natives. My Croatian heart is very happy. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to briefly show you both the fantastic people who came up with the Inclusive Teaching Academy. So we call this the community of practice, and for the purposes of this cohort, which lasted for 3 years, these 6 faculty members are dedicating their 3 years to have come up with the academy, but then also to lead the academy for 2 years. And so the idea is that hopefully the academy will be self-sustaining, and that folks who graduate from the Inclusive Teaching Academy will in turn teach future cohorts and future generations of faculty. And really quickly, I wanted to show you how we've structured the Inclusive Teaching Academy and show you our Blackboard site, which we're very proud of. So essentially, we have the objectives here, and the structure is 4 modules that take course over the semester, with each module being 3 weeks. And it's a mix of in-person meetings and the completion of modules online. And so we try to mimic the course of a semester, from course setup to classroom climate to designing transparent assignments and then grading for equity. So all the biggies when it comes to teaching. And probably the best part of the academy is the Blackboard site, and this comes from the genius of our instructional designers. Let me see. This is when the fellows look at it, this is what it looks like. So there's several modules. And so in the first module, what we're particularly keen on is can you see the module okay? No? Let me try sharing that again. So what we like about it is that we've really tried to make it Coursera-like. So when folks start the course, it is highly interactive. And then, for example, for some of them, there are interactions with videos and case studies. So, for example, here they will start with the video. And they will have to work through a scenario on the module itself, so that it's not static, and so that it mimics as much as it can the classroom experience for the participants. And so our long-term goal for the Inclusive Teaching Academy is to bring in people potentially from outside the university who are interested in this kind of work, and also to allow people who may not have the luxury of having face-to-face meetings or wanting to take the academy of their own time to be able to take it, so as to expose as many faculty as possible. So this is, in short, what the Inclusive Teaching Academy, how it's set up and how it functions. Happy to take questions, thoughts.
This is Aaron. Well, I have to tell you, I love it. As you would pretty well know I would. I'm anxious to find out how much research, basic research you're going to do on this to see the impact that it could have, and whether or not then down the road you use that as a way that it can be a replicable model in other places.
For one thing, Dr. Thompson, Marco has put an assessment, and basically the whole thing is based on assessment. You come in with a syllabus from your class, and then at the end product, you redesign your syllabus. So that's a good data collection point right there too. I think that you can tell how it made a difference just in that short semester. And then we'll build in some other things for some long-term stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm working with Department of Criminal Justice Training is they redo their curriculum for faculty to make it more culturally competent. When I had a chance to review yours, I thought these are the sorts of things that you want to be able to see happening in other venues other than just higher education, right? As we think about challenging ourselves to be, I still consider myself a faculty member, by the way. Challenging myself and others like me to be better at what we do. So anyway, great. And I have to tell you, Chair Walker is happy that it's coming from Bowling Green. I'll just say that.
You are absolutely right. Of course, I'm not surprised, having known Dr. Kirby for a number of years. So.
And the other exciting part is that we already started. Today was actually the first session that we had with faculty. So by May, we will have graduated our first cohort and have our first data set.
We look forward to hearing a little bit more about this at our next meeting as you go through, because that will be very helpful to see what the response from the faculty has been, how you're seeing an impact from this. That will be very helpful for us.
Since Dr. Kirby and I have worked well together, she has ingrained in me the discipline of collecting data always and forever. So we'll have plenty to share.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions? Again, thank you very much. I am so proud of Western.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, Dr. Thompson. Review of the evaluation process.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gaines Brown, and I'm an associate for diversity, equity, and inclusion with Kentucky CPE. I have to turn my video off because the Wi-Fi here is very scant, but I will share my presentation and we'll go forward from there.
Thank you.
Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Are you all able to see these slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So glad to hear that. All right. So again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gaines Brown III. I'm the new associate for diversity, equity, and inclusion for CPE. It is such an honor to have once been a beneficiary of Kentucky's post-secondary education as a student, and to now serve in this role that effectuates change for the colleges and universities in the Commonwealth. It's a pleasure to finally meet you all and put faces to names. If you have not received any correspondence from me previously, you will in the coming weeks regarding our diversity strategy evaluation process. So without further ado, we will begin with exploring the historical context of the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and its implementation. So in 1982, the Council on Higher Education, CHE, developed the Commonwealth of Kentucky Higher Education Desegregation Plan in response to a U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR, finding that the Commonwealth of Kentucky, in violation of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as Kentucky had failed to eliminate the vestiges of its former de jure racially dual system of public higher education. For the next 25 years, CHE and CPE focused the desegregation plan and its subsequent revisions on increasing the enrollment and success of African-American students, increasing the number of African-American employees on campus, and enhancing Kentucky State University, with later versions also focusing on improving campus climate. CPE created the Committee on Equal Opportunities to provide oversight on plan implementation and ensure that diversity initiatives were a priority on Kentucky's public college and university campuses. In December of 2008, the OCR released Kentucky from the remedial planning process, but CPE sought to continue its diversity efforts and initiatives. CPE has a statutorily mandated responsibility in the area of diversity and equal opportunities through KRS 164.020, Section 19, which requires that CPE postpone the approval of any new academic program at a state post-secondary educational institution if the institution has not met the equal educational opportunity goals established by CPE. As such, the CPE directed the CEO in collaboration with the public institutions to develop a process that would help to ensure that the significant progress made in promoting diversity was preserved and further enhanced throughout public post-secondary education. As a result, the first Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Education Diversity Policy and Framework for Institution Diversity Plan Development, adopted by the CEO and CPE in August and September of 2010, respectively. Under this policy, CPE set forth a very broad definition of diversity, and institutions were required to create diversity plans that addressed, at a minimum, 4 areas. One being student body diversity that mirrors the diversity of the Commonwealth of the institution service area. 2, the closing of achievement gaps. 3, workforce diversity. And 4, campus climate. The duration of the policy was 5 years, with review commencing during the 5th year. In this new iteration of the policy, CPE seeks to build on the strong foundation cultivated over the past 30 years and further integrate the new degree program approval process and the statewide diversity policy into one seamless framework, upon which equal educational opportunity goals can be set, strategies to obtain those goals can be developed, adopted, and implemented, and institutional progress can be evaluated. In addition, CPE continues to affirm diversity as a core value in its statewide strategic planning process. As such, this policy and CPE strategic agenda are completely aligned with common metrics, strategies, and appropriate references and acknowledgements. When we use the term diversity, we are not just speaking of race and ethnicity, we also include low income. In addition, for the purposes of this plan, we define underrepresented minorities, or URM, as Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, 2 or more races, which is a growing population on all campuses, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and American Indian or Alaska Native. And this annual report includes a mixed method approach that includes quantitative and qualitative sections.
Hey, Gaines,
So it can
before
grow.
you move to the next slide, could you click on Use Slideshow? We can see your presentation note screen. I was wondering if you could make it a little bit bigger.
View slideshow. Here we go.
There
Thank
we
you.
go.
All right. Oh, so sorry about that. All right. Let's see. So these are the diversity process focus areas. So the opportunity is also associated with diversity, and this diverse student body is essential for contributing to the educational experience of all students in Kentucky's post-secondary education. Success being associated with equity, that is regarding student success at each of the institutions by helping those students be successful when they arrive on campus, and impact, which is associated with inclusion. To fully realize the positive effects of diversity, Kentucky's public institutions must become communities that provide an inclusive and supportive environment for a diverse group of students. So with these institutional plans, they must identify strategies in the 3 focus areas being opportunity, success, and impact. These 3 terms we will speak on at length in a slide coming up. It must outline an appropriate plan for assessment. It must demonstrate institution-wide responsibility, and the Committee on Equal Opportunity provides policy oversight for the plan implementation. So we are in the reporting period for academic year 2020 and 2021. The qualitative report is submitted in March, and the 2020 and 2021 academic years data will be analyzed. The rubric is divided into two sections, and as I mentioned previously, there are both quantitative and qualitative sections. So for universities, there are 18 points possible, and for the community colleges in Kentucky, there are 16 points possible. For the qualitative section that includes the enrollment narrative, there is 18 points possible for both. The minimum score for eligibility to offer new programs is 24 total points for universities and 22 for the community colleges. So in this quantitative report, the evaluation of progress towards the targets that the institutions set for themselves is going to be associated with these following areas, that being undergraduate and graduate enrollment, first and second year retention for URM and low-income students, the graduation rate of URM and low-income students, degrees conferred, credentials awarded for the same group of students, and also workforce diversity. There are 9 areas for universities and 8 areas for KCTCS institutions. So with the scoring, 2 being the highest score, that is stating that the annual target has been met or exceeded for the institutions. 1 being, this means that the annual target was not met, but it was a value greater than the 2015-2016 baseline, and 0 being that the target was not met and the value is less than the pre-established baseline from 2015 and 2016. The maximum amount of points available to have scored on is 18 points for universities and 16 points for community colleges in Kentucky. So as I mentioned previously, these are the 3 focus areas that is integral to the qualitative report, those being opportunity, success, and impact. Each of the institutions plan identify strategies designed to meet the goals set forth in each of the focus areas. And for each of the focus areas, reports are evaluated on the following criteria: implementation of the strategies with fidelity, analysis of strategy effectiveness, and the lessons learned along with the next steps. So in this section, it's evaluated on 3 areas, and that is very similar to what we've seen previously in our quantitative report analysis, and 2 meets or exceeds expectations. 1, making progress towards meeting expectations, and 0 being that it does not meet expectations. There are a maximum of 18 points for these 3 policy areas, and each with 3 evaluation areas and a maximum of 2 points in each category. So very important to note as we move forward in this process, the timeline for the evaluation process. So in January, where we are currently, we are verifying strategies in the diversity reporting tool. In February, we will be having calibration meetings with our review teams to inform them and instruct them on the scoring of the diversity reports. On March 1st, at the close of business, each of the institutions are charged to submit their diversity plan reports. On March 7th, we are disseminating these reports to our review teams. And in April, we will report on these scores to you all, the Committee on Equal Opportunities. And in June, we will report these final scores to the CPE board. And in July, on July 1st, the improvement plan instructions going to be given to the institutions that did not meet the minimum required score. And that is all that I have. If you have any questions, I will take those now. Well, I definitely appreciate you for taking the time to listen to me ramble on about the process. But if you have any questions, I'll take those now. And I'll have my email and office phone number listed.
Gaines, can you talk a little bit about how members will be notified, which groups they're on, receiving information for the evaluation process?
For certain, and thank you for that question. We are working internally to delegate who will be serving on these review teams. Those are going to be CPE members, and a lot of them will be pre-assigned to universities that they have reviewed previously, so that way they can give some type of foreknowledge on the strategies that these institutions have reported on previously, because they have prior knowledge of the strategies they reported on. They'll be able to appropriately address the progress towards meeting their targeted goals. So that's the process and how we go on with the review teams. And then from the we will have a calibration meeting with these review teams to discuss how to score. And from there, we will have those teams score each of the institution's diversity strategies, and we will report those to you all in April.
Let me make a quick clarification. The teams are created, they're a combination of both CEO members as well as CPE members. So you all are a part of this as well, since the CEO provides oversight. And so what we're going to do is add additional team members to be, what we've done in the past is had 3 members per team. And that will be a combination of CPE and CEO members. So that particularly those of you who are new to the process, we'll make sure that you have individuals who done this before, so that you're not all new together, to be able to give you that support. So that was one thing I want to make sure, is that it's a combination of the two.
Excellent. And when do you expect those notifications will be going out? First part of February? In terms of our teams?
Yes. Yes, we'll be working within the next week or so to be able to identify the teams, to make sure that they are solidified, so that we can get those to you.
Excellent. Are there any other questions?
This is Dr. Robertson. I have a question. Dr. Offit, where it appears there are several new members on the committee this year. Remember last year or in the year prior, we were assigned the same schools to work on. So will we be assigned different schools this time as well?
So not only are there new members on the CEO, there are also some new members at CPE. And so we are going to, again, reach out to individuals to see who is both willing and available. And we'll try to, I know that's a question that you ask each time, because I know that you've been with us for a couple of years now, and I know you're particularly interested in seeing progress in certain schools. And so we have discussed that internally to see, excuse me, if there's a way that we can continue to keep those teams with those schools, to see if how they're progressing over the last couple of years. And so it's likely it won't be everything, but there should be probably some familiarity there. But just with the new individuals, we'll do as best we can to create some of that consistency. But there's likely going to be 1 or 2 that you may not have seen, just based on the new people that are both at CPE and with the CEO.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I was just asking, to make sure that there's consistency across the recommendations that we're making, because I know last year when several of the representatives were reviewing some of the plans, they were making commentary that was in relation to suggestions or recommendations that had already been priorly made. So I just wanted to make sure that there was some consistency across the board in fulfilling those recommendations and making sure that the plans are updated accordingly.
Yes, absolutely.
Don, this is David. I would also agree with that. It seems like it's been it's much more beneficial is like when we're assigned, 3 or 4 colleges and universities, is to be able to follow them through year to year, if possible, because we kind of have that history with them, and it just makes that process a lot easier. Now, that taken into account, there's a lot of things that change, as we'll get a plan that's written, and then the next time we review it, that person's not even at that institution anymore, and they've kind of had to not start over, but pick up someone else's plan and try to figure it out. So I think it's beneficial for us to be able to keep as long as possible with the same institution so that we can advise the new people that change, but also we have some institutional knowledge. If that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. And I thank both of you for making that comment. I knew that and have expressed that to the team, but I'm glad that you all supported what I thought that your thought process was. So I'm glad that you have said that. And so we will look into keeping that consistency as we create the teams and assign the reports to you.
Any other questions for Dr. Offit or for Gaines?
I had a
Thank you,
question.
Greg. Yes.
I'm sorry. I understand we're discussing the current policy in place for evaluation, and I look forward to learning more about it as I am a new member. I wondered if there was ever a consideration of ability or disability as an added dimension of diversity, if that could be considered moving forward.
So I'll let Travis speak to how the metrics were created based on the 2015-2016 baseline and that iteration of the policy under which we're working, because I wasn't there when the targets were decided. But we have discussed working with individuals with disabilities and how we can support them at CPE, not specifically tied to this particular policy, but have been working with how we can ensure that we better work with students that fall within that population. So Travis, can you speak to any, if that conversation was had back when the targets were identified in terms of how we were going to identify those annually?
So the question is about targets, how we set the current targets or potential targets related to folks with disabilities. Dr. Ellis, can you mind repeating your question for me?
Yeah, I was just curious. I understand there's an existing policy, and admittedly, I don't know all of the details yet, but I was just interested in whether or not ability or disability could be captured in the future as an added dimension or type of diversity, as I think it's so important in the state to support college goers who do identify as having a disability.
Yeah, so that's a great comment. We've done, and I'd like to send this to you. We did a webinar in our higher equity series on this topic that we'll make sure and send you at the end of this conversation, but at the end of our meeting. But we talked about it some. I think it's captured probably in the third section with impact on the campus. I think certainly campuses could talk about that in their overall campus diversity when we look at other types of diversity. The problem, I'm sure institutions probably know, I'm just thinking about it from on a purely data perspective. And, of course, disabilities run the gambit, from, all across, physical, mental, there's a lot of different things. Institutions are accommodating students on a variety of different areas. Obviously, they're required to do that by federal law. So the issue was more, we did talk about, the issue was more of, how would we quantify those? How would we track it? What kind of metrics would we set for those individuals? I think it probably lends itself more to the qualitative aspect and sort of the campus climate, overall campus diversity kind of conversations is more so than just the metrics. again, campuses are welcome to sort of discuss that in some of their narratives, but I think in this upcoming policy, we may highlight that a little bit more. For example, we highlighted cultural competency in the prior or the current version of the policy, and we're seeing some things done in that area. We might make a specific call out to asking campuses to make sure that their campuses are more inclusive for students that have disabilities and that sort of thing, and ask them some strategies that they're implementing in order to do that. Again, it's just a lot of it is just on the data side, it's a little hard to collect, and like I said, the types of disabilities that there are out there and the strategies vary so widely that it's a little difficult. But that's not to discount the need to help those students and make sure that they feel part of the campus. And so if you have ideas on how we can do that we'd love to hear those.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'll just have one comment in advance, and thank you all for your participation, obviously in this committee, but this is really the sort of where a lot of the value that we provide in this process comes, is in the review process. And as Mr. Carpenter mentioned, providing feedback to the campuses. Dr. Robertson mentioned that too. It's such a rich, thorough process, and it's a heavy lift for all you all that have gone through it before. How much work it is, but there's just so much value, and the campuses really appreciate the feedback that you all provide. So I just wanted to thank you all in advance before we get into the review process, because there's just so much value in it. It's a lot of work, but it's so very much worth it. So I just wanted to thank you all in advance for all that you're going to be doing with that.
Thank you, Travis. Are there any other questions or comments? Good job, Gaines. Moving on, I did notice that Colby has joined us. Do we need a verbal affirmation of his presence?
Just for the record, if he and Robert Croft can give us a yay, we're present, that would be. And then, of course, at the time we asked, they turned the camera. Great. Robert said yay, we got him. And Kobe may have stepped away, but we'll come back to him. There he is.
No, I'm right here. Sorry.
Okay, both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. We have overview of policy review process. Jessica?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all this afternoon. My name is Jessica Romeus, and I am the Senior Associate for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the Council. I'm here today to talk to you all about our upcoming policy review. So our annual reporting and evaluation process that Gaines just walked us through operates under the 2016 Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Education Policy for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And that policy was written in alignment with CPE's 2016 to 2021 strategic agenda. And so here we are now, 2022. So this upcoming report will actually be the final one under the current strategic agenda. And as such, we will be reviewing and possibly revising the DEI policy as far as definitions, goals, focus areas, so on and so forth. We will also be reviewing the reporting and evaluation process as well. And this is just because we want to make sure that the policy and its corresponding reporting and evaluation process is operating at maximum efficiency. We also want to ensure that the content of the policy is up to date and that we're still using up-to-date language and terminology. And we also want to make sure that it continues to be in alignment with CPE's new strategic agenda. So as part of this review process over the next few months, we will be soliciting feedback from all of our various stakeholders, which of course includes you all as Committee on Equal Opportunities members, as well as our institutional representatives that are involved in writing these reports every year. So I just wanted to go ahead and put that on you all's radar. We haven't necessarily finished hashing out all of the details just yet regarding how we're going to go about collecting feedback as far as surveys and focus groups and whatnot. But we will definitely be sure to keep you all in the loop when we do have those details. But in the meantime, I do want to give you all a tiny bit of homework and just ask that everyone take some time to do a preliminary review of the policy so that we can be ready to get the ball rolling on this project pretty soon. I'm going to drop the file for the policy in the chat in just a moment, but it's also available on the CPE website under the section titled Our Work, and you just click diversity and then the policy will be under that. And I will ask that Travis or Dr. Offit, you all can jump in if I missed anything.
Jessica, I think you nailed it. Yeah, please take a time to look. I mean, Dr. Ellis, your comments, that's the kind of thing we want to hear, but, we will be, we are undertaking this review. We'll pull some data together. We'll have a report for you all, obviously, on sort of how the first 5 years went. But we do have the opportunity to make changes. And we think the process works pretty well, but it could always be improved, I think. So please give us your feedback. We'll be getting feedback from the campuses too. And we'll give them the opportunity, obviously, to get their reports in for this year. And we know they're focusing on that at this time. But after that, we're going to really dive in with them deep to figure out kind of what we want to do for this next iteration. So.
And Jessica, could you just outline again the timeline that we're looking at for this policy review?
So it will be over the next few months. We don't have a solidified timeline just yet, but we are hoping that the review will be, any review and revision will be completed by the end of the summer, hopefully. I know that if there are major revisions needed, it will have to go through the legislative process. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But as far as the review, it'll be over the next few months, starting here pretty soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Are there any questions of Jessica? Any comments? And thank you for including that link. Appreciate that.
Yes, no problem.
Are there any other issues that should come before the committee?
Madam Chair, the only thing that I wanted to say is I didn't know, because you are our new chair, and the last time we met, you were not on the committee, nor was Dr. Ellis, and didn't want to let the opportunity pass for if you all want to say something, say a little bit about yourselves, ask any questions of the committee members. It's just we have new people, and we as important as the work is, we hit the ground rolling, and we started as we should, but just wanted to make sure that if you wanted to say, hey, or ask a question of any of the members, you had that moment before we moved on.
Thank you. Dr. Ellis?
Yeah, I'm Kelly Ellis. I'm an associate professor at Eastern Kentucky University. I'm also the chair of the Department of Clinical Therapeutic Programs. That's an academic unit that houses the training programs in clinical mental health counseling, school counseling, and speech language pathology. I'm a speech therapist by trade, hence the advocacy for disability populations. But I am very excited about the opportunity to serve as the CPE faculty representative, and particularly to be a part in this group. Diversity is lacking in all of the programs that I manage in terms of the workforce that we are producing. So I'm very interested in helping to promote work in this area, particularly considering things like holistic admissions as it relates to specialty healthcare professions. So I look forward to the opportunity to learn from each of you, and I'm super excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be not only a member of the CPE, but also chair of this committee. My background is, it's kind of like Billy in Family Circus, who goes a circuitous route. I've had a number of positions, all of them generally in communications, public affairs, information affairs, worked for 2 U.S. congressmen, was press deputy to the president of the LA City Council. We moved our family to Bowling Green. We looked for a community to better raise our 2 children and chose Bowling Green because of its diversity. That was one of the key components of our exploration. And you know, we've got a very strong international community. We've got the university, and we've got, at that time, I guess there were 28 languages spoken in our community because we didn't want to raise our kids with all white kids. And so that was an important part of it. And served as mayor for, was the first mayor reelected to succeed themselves, and then was tapped to fill the unexpired term of Secretary of State, and then was head of the Kentucky Parks Commission. I was a Parks Commissioner for 4 years. And one of the things that I've always felt was important was inclusion. And I've always tried to not just talk about it, but practice it. And the thing that I like about this committee is that it's not just understanding the need for awareness of diversity, but it's actually taking steps to ensure that that is the process and that is the end result. So I am very excited about this position, this new role for me, and I'm excited to be a part of this committee. And if anyone has any questions, my contact information is on the website. I welcome your input, and I look forward to learning from each and every one of you. Big business now is the next committee. Please put it on your calendar, August 20 or April 26th, 2022.
And that will be the meeting that we will present the results of the scores for this diversity evaluation reporting process. So just to add to that.
And are we looking at doing that on Zoom? Are we at a point, we hopefully in April, that we might be able to get back together again? I always enjoyed us getting together, so.
If
We
you
can,
all
we'd like
want
to.
get together, we can certainly look at making that happen. So
We have great space now at the council, by the way. We just had some space remodeled, and so we've got a great place to meet. Just need some meetings to put into it, and need things to get better to where we can have in-person meetings. So hopefully by then we can. So we'll plan on it.
Please, in the meantime, everybody stay safe. Colby, glad to see your face there, and clearly you're recovering well.
COVID can't keep me down for too long. Excited to get back to class today for the first time in 10 or so days. So
Wow, excellent. Well, thank you all for your participation. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that we were able to have a quorum and get a lot of work done. We've got a lot more work to do over the next couple months, so look forward to seeing you all again in April, and in the meantime, seeing a number of you during the evaluation process. Is there a motion? Do we need a motion to adjourn?
you do.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye? Opposed?
Aye.
We are officially adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.